Bonjour à tous, on va démarrer. Je vous présente. Donc, pour écouter la conférence, le plus efficace, c'est de mettre les petites oreillettes. Vous vous branchez sur le channel 1 et vous pouvez régler le volume à gauche. Comme ça, vous entendrez très bien. Donc, je présente Stefana, Bianca, Nazare, qui va vous parler, qui va faire des retours d'expérience autour de la mise en place de XWiki.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Is the sound okay? Yeah? Okay, great. All right. Thank you very much for joining. Very big crowd today. We will have a short talk about our experience migrating people from Confluence to XWiki and the experience in general migrating from a proprietary big tech software to an open source one. And also share the stories that we learned across the 4 years we have been focusing more on this use case. I'm Stefana. I am the product owner of apps and the product owner of cloud at XWiki. And I'll tell you just a word about XWiki as well to better understand where we come from. So XWiki is a knowledge management software. It is being developed by the product team within XWiki SIS company, but also by the community of the product. Being an open source product, it has quite an extensive community that contributes to development, but also testing and other aspects. It was created 20 years ago along with the company. The scope of the company extended a bit in the meantime, so we're not only doing the XWiki product, we also do a few others, but in this presentation we'll focus on XWiki. So XWiki is a knowledge management software. It is a wiki-like software, so you have wiki-like features like page creation, linking pages, everything that you would expect from a wiki software, and much more, such as structured data. You can extend it with over 1,000 extensions to make it your own solution as you need it, like an intranet, documentation platform, procedures, whatever use case you would have for capturing, managing, and sharing large amounts of data. And finally, XWiki is very safe, scalable, and reliable. This has been proven across the years by this software being used by very large organizations such as Amazon. They use XWiki for their whole technical documentation. Lenovo also uses it, and many other thousands. These are just some big words that we can name drop. Now, a word about the company. So, as I said previously, the company was created 20 years ago, right after the software. We offer, as a company, we not only develop the product, but we also offer services on top of the product. So the model that we use to be able to make an open source software is that we offer services on top of it. We have offered services to about 800 clients so far. And probably the most important thing about us and for today's talk is that we have and always will be doing true open source. Everything that we did so far has been open source and will always stay this way. Now, let's switch into the big tech part and what happened with Confluence. XWiki and Confluence appeared at around a similar time, and they have been competitors for a long time. Confluence is proprietary, so we took a very different direction compared to XWiki. And it used to have a server version, so you could host Confluence on your server and have support on it. And you would also have a cloud version, so you would host it in their cloud. A lot of people used Confluence Server. They had it on their premise so that they would manage where the data is being hosted and who has access to that data, which is a very important aspect, of course, for a lot of companies. And in October 2020, they announced that they will discontinue the Confluence Server, which meant that they would not offer support and upgrades anymore for Confluence Server. And everyone that has been using Confluence Server would need to move to Confluence Cloud, so host the data somewhere where Atlassian would manage, or a data center as well that Atlassian would manage. The data centers could be in certain locations, so you could handle the location where your data was hosted, but it usually presumed the 200% price increase right away, so it wasn't really an option. So with this in mind, of course, this has been a threat with proprietary that we have been trying to talk about for many years. We have been saying for many years that using proprietary software is dangerous because of this type of vendor lock-in, because you could, you would need to do anything that the vendor company wants you to do, like switching to a cloud system, or they can restrict migration tools and so on. And when this announcement was made, we tried to not say "we told you so." We said that a bit. This is a screenshot from the tweet of our CEO when Confluence did this announcement. It's a very long and fun thread about the consequences of this and the comparison between proprietary and open source software. But after we passed this moment, we had to look at what could we do. So what could we do for the hundreds of organizations that now wanted to migrate to an open source software, didn't have that many options, and may want to migrate very fast. So this is the story of what we did, and also what we learned from all this, and what we think could be useful for other open source companies that may find themselves in this situation, but also for potential clients that may need to decide between an open source and a proprietary product. So the announcement was made in late 2020. At that point, we did have available migration tools. So it was not like we've never done a Confluence migration before. We have been doing that for many years, about 16 years in that point. So we did have migration tools, but they were quite, they had quite a steep learning curve, and they were a bit difficult to use. And they also did not handle all types of data. So what we had was the filter streams here. This is just a screenshot of the conversion. So filter streams would convert Confluence syntax into XWiki syntax. But it would not convert all types of data. It would not convert at that point users, permissions, blogs, and other types of data that Confluence organizations were using. And then after you would import the pages, so you would convert the syntax from Confluence to XWiki, you would have to recreate the hierarchy with the nested pages migrator. So it was a bit difficult to use. There were a lot of configurations that you had to make, and it took quite a long time. So we had those tools available. We quickly updated all of our online resources to help anyone that wanted to migrate right away and maybe catch a bit some early adapters. We created some migration guides, again, to help the users that wish to migrate on their own. And then looking at the increase in number of leads, we decided that we will soon have to make an internal decision and maybe improve our tools. For reference, the increase that we had in demands to migrate was about 815% in the 30 months after the announcement compared to the 30 months before the announcement. So it was an absolutely exponential increase in demands to migrate from Confluence to XWiki. So in 2021, we decided upon and announced our strategy to address this new increased market demand. We started hosting free webinars, again, to help users that wanted to migrate on their own. And also, we started working on kind of an integrated migrator, to say so. So we did the first version of the Confluence migrator. It had 6 steps, out of which some were prerequisites, analysis of the space, post-import fixes, and again, the recreation of the hierarchy was still present. Some of these steps were needed because of how XWiki was at that point. So that was on quite an old version. Some of them were also related. Some of the reasons why we had all those steps were also dependent on how we tried to connect to Confluence at that point. So how we saw the needs at that point. But still, it wasn't perfect, but we rolled out a product quickly in a couple of months after the release. And we started getting customers that wanted to sponsor the developments and to make our tools better, basically, for migration. So after this migrator was done, we could consider at this point that we had OK tools. Again, migration tools were not perfect, but they were OK. The main problem that we had at that point was macros. In Confluence, same as in XWiki, same as in multiple software like this, um, you can have formatting macros or additional plugins that you use to insert a diagram, to make an info box, or to do some more advanced content formatting. The problem is that not only Confluence has their own set of kind of core macros, to say so, they also have the concept of a marketplace where third-party companies can put plugins and market those plugins. So we were in a situation where we started migrating the content from Confluence quite okay, but we had hundreds and thousands of macros that were not being converted into XWiki because we would convert the syntax, but XWiki would not know how to interpret that syntax. So we had to find a way to handle those macros. And what I like to point out here is that basically the first adapters that we had, the first clients that we had, were the ones that really put us in the right direction and invested in XWiki so that other companies could benefit from those tools. For example, in 2021, Wapte Corporation, a large railway technology company, sponsored the first set of Confluence macros, to say so, so Confluence bridge macros, if you want to call them. So we implemented about 20 macros that existed in Confluence and did not exist in XWiki, so that once you have migrated content from Confluence, you could see it well in XWiki. It would be displayed in the same manner. Also in the same year, we had the migration of Ostfalia University, a university from Germany. They also sponsored the development of another macro, and we offered them consulting to help them migrate. In 2022, we did some internal investment in a few macros that were commonly requested, but we also had IAG Hotels, a large hotel chain that sponsored another macro. In 2023, we got the Karlsruher Institute for Technology, which is an institute for technology in Germany. They also sponsored a few macros that they needed and that were not present in the package until that point. And we also did some internal investment in other macros. Same year, Université de Lorraine, a university in France, also invested. And then in this year, we had multiple large features being developed, but they were sponsored by multiple organizations, some of which we are not in production yet, so we're not mentioning them. What I'm trying to really focus on here is that we were able to develop these tools and make them available because of the clients that invested in us and because of the clients that understood the real cost of staying with Confluence, of having this risk long term, and they understood that it's better to invest maybe a bit in the beginning for some consulting for the migration and development for the features that they needed, and then have a fair price on the long term for support rather than keeping this risk with Confluence. So this is what's been happening with the macros. Now to go a bit back in time on the migration tools themselves and what experience we had with migration projects. So I told you in the beginning that we not only do products, so we don't only do XWiki and its extensions, but we also offer services on top of this product. Therefore, in all of those years, we not only developed the tools to migrate, but we also executed migration projects, and we started facing some very interesting issues. For example, in 2022, we had a migration where we had a very big error on exporting data, a very specific error with an Oracle database with a certain version. But we had to face that issue, and we had to find ways to get that content out. And afterwards, actually in the last years, Confluence has been changing constantly the syntax of numerous macros, changing the administration features and so on. And we had to constantly adapt to Confluence. So we did not just do a product once and leave it like that. We actually had to constantly follow them, adapt to any new version that they had, and also walk around some missing export features, basically, in Confluence. In the same year, we had another issue, task migration. In Confluence, you can do kind of some to-do lists. So we started getting more and more larger clients that were using that feature a lot. instead of doing kind of a copy of that feature, we actually upgraded our existing task manager to support those tasks coming from Confluence. So these are just some examples from the task manager, and an example of how we did not let Confluence make us a copy of it, but we actually improved our own tools to support showing those that content. Last year, we started getting more and more very large clients that needed optimized migration tools. So we did a whole new product. They see, for example, the Deutsches Elektronensynchrotron in Germany as well. They, for example, had a very large migration. It's more than 1 terabyte of content. And they even had spaces with 80 gigabytes. So we had to make our tools much more performant than they were before. And we started having large companies that were sponsoring developments in the migrator. For example, Southern Methodologist University in the States sponsored permissions migration, something that was missing. DESI sponsored some improvements in performance, and we got to this new version. So we actually ended up with one-step migration. So nowadays, you just either upload the export from Confluence or select it from your server, and you run the migration. And you get a full report about what was done. You can see the macros that are present in that package. We also have a SQL parser, so we're parsing the Confluence query language, and we have implemented the macros that are using that query language. We are also soon rolling out a batch import, so not only like we had in this case, so here we would migrate just space by space. Here we can upload a Confluence backup actually and select multiple spaces from it. But that's not very viable for a 2 terabytes export, for example. So no one could ever export from Confluence 2 terabytes in one shot. So what we're going to do and what we're developing right now is a batch import. So we're going to import multiple spaces at once. And we also adapted a bit the offering. So far, we have about 1,800 teams that tested or migrated that we know of, probably much more that we don't really know of. And we hope, of course, that this number will continue to grow. What we learned from all this is what I also mentioned previously, that we need to deploy an MVP very quickly and learn from the early adapters. We had to keep the product adapting all the time because the other product adapted, but also the market. So the first clients were quite different compared to the clients that we're getting today. So we had to update our tools and our offering. Aside from just looking at the leads, we also think it's very important to look at the support tickets, because the support offering that you think of for a certain type of client may not be optimal in the beginning. So we also actually adapted a bit the offering as we went. Then, very importantly, in the situation that we were in, a lot of clients wanted XWiki to be just a cheaper copy of Confluence. We believe that no open source product should let himself become that. Our software was much more than that, and we always try to make the migration tools make sense with XWiki, and if we had to make some bridges or support certain content, we made it so that it's coherent with the core product. In terms of executing migrations, we underestimated a bit connection issues, testing phases, and the cost of reverse engineering, especially for plugins. That was a bit unexpected. We learned that we need to keep the community engaged and optimize and scale as early as we could. That was all. Thank you very much, and see you at booth E22 if you'd like to continue talking. Thank you.